So today on the Blockbuster show we got a special episode. We're going to be looking at two movies in one video once again. And in this case we have movies that are so bad they're good, and they're both horror related. Well, one's more of a drama, slasher, thriller, whatever you want to call it. We're looking at Wish Upon and The Fanatic. So since Wish Upon came out first, let's start with that. The Fanatic might be a little bit more interesting to talk about, but trust me, Wish Upon has some really hilariously bad shit in it. From what I gather about the people that made this movie, it was directed by some middle-aged guy and was written by some older woman, and it definitely shows when you get to the teenage characters in this movie, because the main character is a high school girl, and the way that all those scenes in school are acted, it feels like watching a bad sitcom that is hilariously out of touch. I mean, I swear, that is some boomer-ass, Steve Buscemi, how do you do fellow kids energy from all those scenes. We start off with this pleasant day in a suburb in some small, nowhere, Midwest type town. And we see a happy family. There's a dad working in the yard, there's a little girl riding on a bike, they have a dog, and there's a happy mother. Everything's going great. Well, the little girl then runs upstairs and notices that her mom hangs herself. And that is quite a way to start a movie. We then jump forward in time and we see that girl, and she's now all grown up. She's living with her dad, and now it just looks like it's permanently overcast in this town to, I guess, kind of symbolize that, things are now in a depressing state. And her dad is like a dumpster diver now. He's just rummaging through garbage all the time. And embarrassing his daughter when she's at school. He goes dumpster diving outside of her school. That's a surefire way for your kid to get made fun of. Then you just get one of many scenes of these kids in school, and the way they talk and the way that they text each other is something that, it's like when old people try to be hip and they're they try using text lingo that people were using in 2010 or 2009. It's like that. Established that main girl has two other friends and some popular girl that's giving her shit and harassing her because she isn't cool or popular enough. There's a popular guy that she's really into, but of course he sees right through her, and she has this friend who's gonna become a crucial part of the plot later. When her dad goes dumpster diving, he comes across this ancient Chinese music box, and she gets her hands on it, and it turns out that it has magical abilities and it can grant wishes, and it's basically kind of like a genie tale kind of thing where it grants you a wish, but it does something where it turns out something horrible happens in the process. Then from there, it's like the movie becomes a knockoff Final Destination type movie, where you just get these scenes where, someone that vaguely connects to main girl in her life ends up dying off because she made a wish. And then there's just times like the first wish that she makes in the movie is that she wishes the popular girl would rot. So she literally just starts rotting at the face, mold starts growing and then starts peeling off, and there's a huge chunk of flesh ripped off her face. Wishing Box does this thing where, if you wish for something and you phrase it in a weirdly specific way, then it turns out bad. She wishes that the popular guy at school that she likes would fall madly in love with her, and he basically becomes a stalker later in the movie when shit starts getting bad. She wishes that she could inherit her rich uncle's fortune, and this results in him, this rich old guy from down the street, slipping in a bathtub, and then he breaks his head open, and then she gets the riches. She ends up going to that friend of hers that I told you about, and he says that he has a sister who, since they're both Chinese, so he says, oh, well, she's all into ancient Chinese mythology and stuff, so maybe she can help explain this. And there's a part where they're driving to her house, and she lives in this hipster warehouse or some shit. It's like an apartment, but it's massive, and it looks like grungy, but there's hipster millennial Christmas lights hung up and shit. I don't know what the hell that set design was, but as they're driving over there, there's a part where they start talking and she says something about multiverse theories, and again, the out-of-touch dialogue writing, the guy's like, yo dog, you dig on multiverse theories too? Straight up just wanted him to say something like, oh yeah, I go big brain sometimes, I watch Rick and Morty, what of it? It was seriously that out of touch. That is horrible character writing for teenagers. But anyway, yeah, they drop the wish box off at that girl's house to have her look at it, and she vaguely explains like what it is, but she says that she'll hold on to it to make sure that, you know, main girl doesn't get her hands on it and make more wishes. Of course, the wish box needs to have her do more wishes and kill more people, so they have it that she ends up running into some she has like some giant elephant skeleton or something like that. It's something with a really large tusk, and she ends up slipping and she goes face first into it. And like half the death scenes that are in this movie, they're just comical. They're just like, they're so goofy and poorly edited. It's like they're not scary half the time. She wishes that she could inherit her uncle's money, and since he dies because of her wish, she ends up getting the money. They live in like some really expensive, lofty, you know, upper class apartments. They have a bunch of money. There's a fashion montage, like this is some 2000s Mean Girls knockoff all of a sudden. Despite living in, you know, $1 billion apartment now and having a bunch of really expensive, awesome shit, her dad's just still a dumpster diver for some reason. So she wishes that he would be cool, and instead he transforms into this like suave type, and he plays like saxophone in a band, and her friends are crushing on him. So that was a thing that happened. One of the wishes results in one of her friends dying because her friend is playing some like knockoff Pokemon Go app or whatever, and she's in the elevator and she's gonna go down to meet them. The elevator ends up breaking and it collapses and she dies inside of it. So yeah, there's more characters dying. Eventually she decides she's gonna stop using the box. She locks it away in some area that she can easily gain access to it again. And then I guess the box started making her life miserable again, just to get her to use it more and make more wishes. I guess that's what they were going for, because then she's not popular at school anymore. That bratty girl that she wished would rot away, you know, she's now fucking with her again. It's a bunch of shit like that. So then eventually she decides to use the box again. Her friend says, no, don't do that. That's gonna kill more people. Ultimately, she wishes that she would go back to the day before her mother died. So now she wakes up and her mother is still alive. Well, that's great, but then the twist is that this time her dad dies because he's trying to cut down trees with some guy in their front yard. The guy accidentally slips off the rung of a ladder, and he has an active chainsaw or like some tree cutter thing, and slices the dude's head off. So ultimately then, main girl then goes back to the wishing box, and she wishes that she'd go back to the day to when her dad found the thing. So now her life is basically back to normal. She reset everything. She finally realizes that she really loved her friend all along, and so she kisses him, and, you know, everything seems to be going great, but then, oh, the big twist of the movie is that, well, she gets hit by a car. And the way that it's done in the movie is, again, it's laughable. It's like a cartoon. It's a comedy effect. She gets hit by a car and she goes like careening, bouncing off of it and into another one. It looks like something you wouldn't see in a serious horror film. One thing I forgot to mention throughout this entire review was that the main girl is played by Joey King. And if you don't know who Joey King is, she was in such classic films such as Kissing Booth 1 and 2. She was in Slender Man, and of course, her magnum opus, Wish Upon. The way this movie came out is just like, you know, the premise is kind of interesting, and if it was helmed by someone who knew how to write characters and knew how to write conflicts, maybe it could have been something. You know, like hand this off to one of the classic horror directors and writers of the 80s. You look at, like, if they handed this to, like, Wes Craven in his prime, maybe that could have been something, but no, this movie, it's laughably bad at best. There's so much stupid shit in this movie. Like, the shit that's in this film that comes off as, like, as if space aliens had written it, it's like on par with The Room and Troll 2 and shit like that, and Birdemic and Cool Cat. It's like that, where you're like, wait, whoa, why is some of this shit happening? What is this? Like, it has that vibe of, wait, why is half of this shit happening? And the movie just kind of expects you to go along with it. You're like, no, you can't expect me to buy things like these two, you know, just everyday teenagers having dialogue back and forth like, yo dog, you dig on multiverse theories? I would recommend watching this movie. I would recommend watching this movie to make fun of it. If you're expecting a serious horror movie, show it to your mom who doesn't like horror movies. Maybe she'll be genuinely scared of it. But otherwise, if you like watching some bad movies to make fun of them, go right ahead. This movie is prime material. Honestly, considering how awful those kissing booth movies are, I would rather watch this, and I would laugh more at this than Joey King trying to give a legitimate comedic performance like she did in Kissing Booth. So speaking of so bad they're good, let's move on to the next film of the video. We're looking at John Travolta's The Fanatic. This movie came out in 2019. It was produced by Redbox. Remember when Redbox was a thing? Even the Blockbuster Video that me and my friends used to work at, we had a Redbox outside of it and everything. That goes to show, yeah, you can rent videos in a store, or you can rent videos with this little dusty old piece of machinery out front. It stars John Travolta, because John Travolta is currently in that stage where he was once, you know, one of the greatest actors of the times, and now he's being delegated to streaming service and straight-to-video trash. People like him and Nicolas Cage and John Cusack. And of course, the king of all those guys, you got Steven Seagal. I mean, have you seen some of the movies that guy's put out in like the last decade and a half? Oh my god, that man is in such schlock. The most important thing about this movie, it was directed by Fred Durst. Yes, the lead singer of Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst, directed and wrote this movie. Granted, though, he wrote it with another guy, so yeah, maybe all the weird decisions that were in this film weren't entirely his fault, but I wouldn't put it past him. The movie takes place in Hollywood, and simply put, it's like Misery. It's like stories like that. You have an obsessive fan, in this case it's Moose, played by John Travolta in a wig that's like a mixture of the Mo Howard from Three Stooges wig mixed with like a mullet, kind of. And he has big goofy glasses. He's always wearing Hawaiian shirts for some reason. And he's always just, he has a mental problem. They established that he's not all there. He has some kind of mental disability. Assuming that John Travolta was either told to act like that, or he thought that this would be some kind of Oscar award winner move, because there were so many movies where famous actors played people with mental handicaps and they got Oscars for it. I like to imagine a couple months after the movie came out, John Travolta then sat down and rewatched Tropic Thunder, and then he realized, oh shit, shouldn't have done it like that.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
He plays a character named Moose, and Moose is basically this guy who is obsessed with this one horror film actor, Hunter Dunbar. He's friends with a couple of other people. He's friends with this girl who's part of like the paparazzi, and she's always trying to like sell people like shit, like, you know, maps to the stars' homes. And he's friends with this guy who runs like a movie props and movies merchandise, you know, comic book type store. So basically, I guess the movie is trying to imply that, like, you know, all these, like, you know, people from, like, the seedy underbelly of Hollywood, they're all connected in some way or some shit. Maybe that's what they were saying, or maybe that's looking too deep into this. Moose really wants to meet this Hunter Dunbar guy, and at one point he's going to get him to sign a VHS of one of his favorite movies from him, and they establish that Hunter Dunbar, right off the bat, is basically an unlikable dick. He gets a call from his ex-wife, and then he gets up out of the autograph thing, and he has to go into the alleyway to talk to his ex-wife on the phone. And then Moose follows him, and right off the bat, instead of Hunter Dunbar just immediately picking up on the fact that this guy, you know, has a handicap and says, okay, yeah, I'll give you your autograph. I'm sorry, I'm really busy. I gotta go. Here's your autograph. Okay, you know, have a good day. Have a good night. Whatever. Bye. Instead of that, he just immediately just like looks at him and goes, like, says like if he wants to pick a fight and if he wants him to autograph his face with his fist or something like that. Like, they go out of their way to make it like this is an asshole guy and you're supposed to feel bad for John Travolta because, oh, he got his feelings hurt. He was talked down to by his idol. But that's the weird thing about the movie. You don't really know who to sympathize with. Are you supposed to sympathize with John Travolta because, you know, he is mentally handicapped and, you know, he is put down by people, so you should on some level feel bad for him. But later in the movie, he does things like stalk people and try to break and enter into people's houses. So are we supposed to sympathize with him, or are we supposed to sympathize with Hunter Dunbar because he's just a guy who has his own troubles going on, you know, his ex-wife, he's trying to rebuild himself and make himself better. But, oh, he's kind of a dick because he keeps, you know, being mean to this guy. So who are we supposed to sympathize with in this scenario? Going back to that whole Moose is being picked on by other people thing, there's a part where Moose is going to his job and he plays like a street performer, like all those people outside of Grauman's Chinese theater, except instead of dressing up like something that was well, copyrighted, you know, like Captain America, Iron Man, Marilyn Monroe, Jack Sparrow, Spider-Man, whatever. Instead of doing that, he's dressed up like a British police officer, which honestly just reminded me of when they did it in Freddy Got Fingered. And that's mainly just because I reviewed that movie not too long ago.
You want to just barge into a restaurant, dress like a fucking English Bobby, and expect someone to give you a TV show?
I don't know, yeah?
But when he's there, he's getting messed with by what look like college kids who have like a little magic act going on, and like they're giving him shit. And then there's this part where like they're at this like bathroom area, like switching out of their costumes and into their everyday clothes, and then they give him shit. Then they leave, and then there's this like old janitor guy that comes in. He's like, "You gonna put up with that, Moose? You gonna let them talk down to you like that?" I'm just like, did this just turn into a PSA all of a sudden? It just turned into like, you know, a Hallmark sports movie where it's like, you know, kid, they could put you down, but one day you're going to be the next big football player or something like that. It's like, what was that? That guy shows up in like 2 scenes. Like, what was his contribution to the plot? What is his relations to John Travolta's character? What was that? A lot of this movie is very repetitive. It's a lot of just, you know, John Travolta stalks Hunter Dunbar, and Hunter Dunbar tells him to piss off, and then he goes back to doing a bunch of stalkerish type shit. That's kind of the whole movie, and it eventually comes to a head later. Eventually, he finds out where Hunter Dunbar lives, and Hunter Dunbar even gives him an autograph, but oh, he didn't autograph the right thing, so now he's all upset and he stumbles off. And then there's a part where he returns to the house, he climbs over the fence, and he accidentally kills this maid, who was part of another subplot because they established that Hunter Dunbar has some thing going on with his maid, and that was probably what broke up his marriage. So, yeah. But that maid lady gets killed, and they never bring it up until the very end of the film. Every time they show like an exterior shot of Hunter Dunbar's house, I immediately was just like, wait, what about the dead maid? Because this is like, what, 2-3 days after that happened? You can't tell me that that front yard wouldn't start to reek after a while because it's a dead body that's decomposing. How did no one notice? There is one really hilarious part where Hunter Dunbar is driving with his son, and there's a part where he turns on the radio and he goes, you want to listen to some Limp Bizkit? And I just went, oh God, really?
You like a little Limp Bizkit? Sure. You like a little biscuit? Yeah. Yeah? It's loud. I used to listen to this back in the day. This is hot.
Part of me felt that they were going to do something like that. I'm like, okay, Fred Durst directed this. Is there going to be an obligatory Limp Bizkit plug somewhere in this film? I was ready for it, and then when it happened, I was like, oh God, I was not ready for it. As the movie progresses, Moose starts to hate Hunter Dunbar more and more. There's a part where he's watching his old movies and he's like, anybody can be an actor, I can be an actor. And he lashes out at his paparazzi friend, who, that girl, she looked like a high school student. She looked like she should have been like his daughter. Like, it's like, why is she friends with just this like random like 40-plus-year-old man? Like, why does she know him? But anyway, he lashes out at her because she keeps telling him that he can't be stalking or breaking and entering into people's houses. Because he does that, he goes to Hunter Dunbar's house, and when he's asleep, he starts like, like trying to hug him and, get close to him and stuff like that. And he takes pictures of it and puts them on social media. And I'm assuming that girl is probably the only one that follows him or whatever. But she notices and she's like, you're using your social media accounts to broadcast criminal activity. You're going to get caught eventually, which apparently he never does because, yeah, no, the movie doesn't end with John Travolta getting arrested. We'll get to that in a second. Eventually, John Travolta snaps, and he goes to Hunter Dunbar's house, and he ties him up using ropes, so he's now tied to the bed. He shows up with a Jason Voorhees costume, pretends to stab him, and then John Travolta goes, oh, you fell for it, see? I'm a better actor than you, or something like that. Moose then spills out his heart and soul and says that he just wanted to be Hunter's friend and that he wanted autographs and wanted to hang out with him with all of his celebrity friends and stuff like that. And Hunter says that he'll let Moose be his friend, that he'll give him autographs, they can have ice cream together, whatever. He just needs to be untied, which of course was just a ruse so that he can, fight the guy that broke into his house, and then he grabs a shotgun that was mounted over his bed for some reason. Once he gets loose, grabs a shotgun, shoots at John Travolta. John Travolta tumbles downstairs. He shoots his fingers off, and then tries to deafen him by shooting like at him, and you know, his ears start to ring, and then he grabs a Rambo style hunting knife and then stabs John Travolta in the eye, not enough to kill him but just enough to wound him, and then he just gets up and leaves. He just lets John Travolta, this bloody mess, walk out of his house after breaking and entering into his place and them getting into a really violent fight like that. He just lets him leave. So while that happens, the movie then ends with him, I guess, getting a comeuppance because his gardener, who they established earlier, noticed the dead body of the maid in the front yard and reported it to the cops. So now he's getting arrested for a murder that he didn't actually commit. Meanwhile, Moose is stumbling around and people think that he actually has like makeup on, even though he's not. I couldn't tell if that was them trying to make a commentary on like, oh, you know, Hollywood, a bunch of clout chasers and, you know, people running around not really caring about one another, or if it was just like a story thing like, oh, he'd now achieved greatness as a Hollywood street performer, because the movie ends with him making up with his paparazzi friend. She just happens to be driving along where he's walking, and then she picks him up and says that she'll take him to a hospital, and the movie ends with them basically implying that he became a pirate street performer with an eye patch and a fake hook hand. So this one is also pretty hilariously bad, but it's more interesting than Wish Upon. Wish Upon is just incompetence, just based on the fact that it's horribly written in terms of like the character dialogue and the actual like, you know, horror story itself. This one though is more interesting because it's like, okay, wow, they really tried to tell a serious dramatic story, and you know what? You take John Travolta out of it and give it to someone who probably could do it a little bit better and not make it as goofy. Maybe this could have been a legitimately good, serious melodrama. I mean, you go back to when they did it with Misery, that's still a really good movie. I don't even want to say that it was directed poorly because, I mean, as much as I was joking about Fred Durst writing it and stuff, it actually isn't a horribly, like, shot movie or anything like that. It feels like an actual movie, slightly more than something like Wish Upon, but it's just weird because, like, the movie itself is just kind of okay in terms of its story, and then it's just elevated by how bizarre of a performance John Travolta gives. So yeah, that's Wish Upon and The Fanatic. Tune in next time where we're going to be reviewing The Bye Bye Man. Oh no, I'm just kidding. We're actually not looking at that just yet. I'm going to try and save that for October. No, next movie we're going to look at Happy Madison once again, and that weird period of time where Happy Madison and Disney collaborated, because next time we're going to be looking at bedtime stories.
I can't talk too long. I gotta poo.